top story today. Mark Carney's Liberal Party has emerged victorious in Canada's federal election, with CBC projecting that they will form the next government. However, it's still uncertain whether they'll secure a majority in Parliament or if Carney will need to rely on other parties to form a minority government. The Conservatives, led by Pierre Poilievre, gained ground but were defeated in this pivotal contest. While there were tears of disappointment at Conservative headquarters, Liberals celebrated their win with jubilation. This result marks a dramatic turnaround for the Liberal Party, which has struggled in the polls. Just 3 months ago, Carney, who replaced Justin Trudeau as leader, capitalised on growing anger over US President Donald Trump's trade policies and his tariffs. The Liberals are projected to win 161 seats, but may still fall short of the 172 needed for a majority. If that happens, they are expected to form a minority government under Carney, striking deals with other parties to secure key votes. The Bloc Québécois is leading in 23 states, while the NDP holds 8. The Greens are back on track to win 2 seats. We are joined by Quintin A. Hitchcock, American political consultant located in Washington, D.C., to discuss this election in more detail. Quintin, thank you very much for joining us, as always. Obviously, Mark Carney and his Liberal Party have come back from a 25-point, they were behind 25 points. If they do win this, as CBC projects they will, could this be one of the greatest political comebacks in recent times?
From where I'm sitting, one of the greatest political comebacks I've ever seen. And I think the Liberal Party and Prime Minister Mark Carney have a lot. I think Trump has a lot to do with this. And I think there was a lot of anger amongst a lot of voters who maybe weren't ordinarily Liberal voters in Canada, that were quite disgusted with this ongoing trade war, this ongoing turmoil between countries that have been tied at the hip literally and figuratively for decades. So this has been quite the referendum on President Trump. And we saw earlier that about 7.3 million early votes came in Canada, which is a record high by far, meaning a vast majority of voters in Canada voted early rather than voted on election day. And as I said earlier, that usually means one of two things. That means that either they're disgusted with their government that they have, or two, they have a great sense of urgency. And I think that sense of urgency is the ongoing tariff battle that they have with the United States.
Yes, Quintin, I wanted to delve a bit more into the leader, which is Mark Carney, a political newcomer, obviously, but a man with an experienced banking background, an economic background, the former governor of the Bank of England and the Bank of Canada. Did this election fall at precisely the right time for him, outside circumstances coming in at the right time, and as opposed to Pierre Poilievre, who has had years of political experience?
Oh, for sure. I mean, politics is all about timing, Thomas, and we see this a lot at every level of government and in almost any democracy, that sometimes you get great candidates that don't win elections, and sometimes you see candidates that are really not great candidates, and for whatever reason, the timing is right and they're successful. I think Mark Carney is a solid candidate. I know he's received a little bit of backlash from moderate voters in Canada, some Liberal voters in Canada. He's a very green candidate, which is fine. But I think he was a good enough candidate. He was the right candidate at the right time for the right country. And I think a lot of voters in Canada identified him as the right candidate to take on Trump on an economic battle. So I think that was one of the biggest advantages he had over the opposition. I think that is one of the biggest reasons why he won. I think most Canadians, and they've polled this, most Canadians believe that Mark Carney is taking the right approach and handling the ongoing tariff battle the right way. And he's doing it with strength. And I think he's sending a strong message, not just to Canadians, but to people all around the world, especially Americans, that Canada's not going to be pushed around, even by the biggest economy in the world. So to answer your question, absolutely. He is the right candidate at the right time. Timing turned out to be everything in this race. You mentioned earlier that this race was really nothing short of a roller coaster. Conservatives for many months having upwards of a 20-point lead in national polls, many different national polls. I think going into today's race, I think the Liberal Party had anywhere from a 2 to 3 point lead in most national polls. And by all accounts, it looks like they're going to pull out successfully. So this is definitely a referendum, I think, on President Trump, and this a lot of turmoil, quite frankly, unnecessary turmoil between two countries that should be best friends in the world.
Yes, and Quinton, obviously we've mentioned it previously, but prior to January, the economic woes of Canada were at the top of voters' minds, and then Donald Trump came along and something happened. He's obviously even tuned in during this election, this 24 hours of voting, with a tweet, once again emphasizing his annexation plans. How crucial was Trump in this election, the deciding factor?
I'm hesitant, Thomas, to say that he was the only factor, because I don't think that would be accurate. But I do think that he was the strongest factor. I don't think that if President Trump had engaged in a lot of this economic turmoil and this economic confrontation with Canada, we might be having a different conversation right now. So I think it's fair to say, and I think it's a completely reasonable opinion, that President Trump probably had the greatest influence in this race.
Quinn.
The question now becomes, where do we go from here, both from the Canadian perspective and from the American perspective? The two economies, it just doesn't make any sense for the two economies not to work together. I think one side understands that. I'm not quite sure the other side understands that. You mentioned the quite provocative and provoking tweet or Truth Social post that President Trump put out earlier today, I believe 12 hours ago, right in the middle of Election Day voting, essentially mocking, I think we can call it that, mocking this election in Canada. Who knows if he's serious? I don't know that it matters, but he definitely wanted to have influence. I don't know if this is the outcome that he wanted. It could be, it could not be. That's for for President Trump to answer. But he definitely wanted to have influence, and I think he's very aware of the influence that he did have. And it's very interesting to see, given all that, where Prime Minister Mark Carney and Trump go from here with their relationship.
Quinton A. Hitchcock, thank you very much for joining us and your valuable insights as always.